Hello, everyone. Thank you for sliding into our DMs. My name is Dan Pizzetta,
Hi, and I am Montana.
and thank you for coming to our podcast, Slide into the DMs of Disability. This will be part two of our experience at Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill last month. We last left off talking about our Sunday and the beautiful documentary, as well as the beginning of Monday and our reflections from the keynote speaker. Um, so we want the two things that we also wanted to touch on throughout Monday, because Monday is a very heavy, like educational content wise one. So the two things that we really wanted to focus on was first was our experience of meeting with all of our other advocates from our state. So Montana and I, we come from North Carolina and New Jersey respectively. Comparatively, we have a lot more advocates compared to other states. So it was definitely really amazing to see all of these advocates from all across our state. But it was also that difficult balance of figuring out who's exactly going to say what during our state meetings, but also coming together in our smaller groups for our house meetings because while we go to our senators, we all go to our senator meetings, our house meetings are very selective based on where we live. So I from my perspective, I'll kick it off. Was really grateful that New Jersey has a wonderful leader. So each state has a leader that gets everyone together and talks about who will lead what and when, and make sure that everyone is with their meetings for their house as well. For New Jersey, it's this woman named Sarah Chamberlain. She's been running it for years, and she keeps such a tight ship in terms of getting everyone together, making sure that everyone is listened to and respected, making sure that everyone feels confident in saying the part that they want to say and the story that they want to share, as well as informing everyone of which senators or House members already support certain asks that we have, or different angles that we could take based off of some of the history of voting history that our House and Senate members have had. So I really valued and appreciate her voice in terms of getting everyone confident and ready to share what they think is so important to them, and how it highlights the story that we can tell to push the legislation that we want, whether it's in our smaller house groups or our big Senate groups. And whether it's someone with a decade of experience or their first time, I felt like everyone felt ready. Um, how was your experience with North Carolina? Because I don't believe I've actually heard this yet.
Yeah, it was really great. So we had two leaders in this group and they were fantastic. The first one was like the leader for like the Senate meetings, while the other one was the leader for the congressional meetings. So he was in charge of who was going to speak, when, why, and all of that, like you were stating. The person for the Senate meetings, I have connected before, like I don't know, a year ago or so. It was so amazing to finally like see her and meet her. And I also found out with what why she was there. I had a mutual connection on that like specific rare disease. So that was super cool chatting to her about that and how I can like advocate more on that. But everyone else was just completely new. And I have not met them prior, besides, those emails that we were sending out before, being like, hey, make sure you're here. And like you were saying, I felt like the leaders that I had in the group really made everyone seem um, heard as well as valued. There was a lot of people that did not want to raise their hand and share their story at first, which I was a little shocked about. For some reason, I was anticipating like a lot more, I don't say participation, but a lot more eagerness. But then me taking a step back, I realized, oh, Montana, you probably wouldn't have done this like a year or two ago. Like you're starting to get more comfortable with who you are with advocacy, but this may be the first time ever advocating. And I found that first very interesting. And then secondly, after the end of the meeting, people are raising their hands, knowing what they want to say. And they were smiling and just feeling so ready and prepared. Of course, there's still some nervousness. It's new, that's to be expected. But I love seeing my group come from, I'm not sure, like, should I? To raising the hands, all of us like cheering each other on and just super ecstatic. And we would be texting each other because you were saying like the Congress, different congressional leaders, depending on where you live in the state. And we'd be texting each other in the big group chat, how did it go? And we're over here sending photos of like, this is what happened. How did y'all's go? And so it's really amazing to see that. And one person in particular, I remember, I believe this was her first time ever here, and she had a meeting with, she was the only one there, I believe, with the Congress woman's like staff member. And I'm like, oh, how did that go? Because they said, oh, like we canceled. She's like, no, no one cancel it, please. No one cancels it. I want to go. And she was the one who was somewhat nervous to speak. And then after I got to talk to her and she did it, like she spoke, and I was just such like a proud friend in that moment, being like, wow, just like a day before you were so nervous and you weren't sure if you were going to speak, and then you did it like by yourself. I felt like she was such a warrior, and it just makes me smile so much thinking about it, of where we started in North Carolina as a group and then where we finished as a group. It was so impactful and amazing, and I love my team.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that is just, it's some like, despite us signing up for it, there's still those nerves that come with talking to staffers, and or
Yeah.
if you're lucky in a situation, the House or Senate member proper. It is very intimidating. It's this whole new environment. You feel like kind of the weight of the world in terms of your community. You're essentially asking someone for their vote, or bringing something up or supporting it. So it does mean a lot. And so it is, it does have a lot of pressure, and that kind of realization for not only new people, but for me and a couple others, like it can have those nerves,
Mhm.
just thinking about it at first. But I think it's like you said, like having that proper leadership and that guidance in our states is such tremendous impact. And not only just on me, like I remember there was someone in our group, they were 16 years old, they were new to this all, um and just being able to talk out, um they were not a little unfamiliar with the bills, but once like we were talking more and more about how each one impacts the community, they really found how their story resonates with one of them, and they were able to find that confidence to be able to share it. And they were in my house group, so I had the pleasure of hearing their story, not only in the house group but also in the Senate ones. And it was so incredible to seeing this kid's growth, from the first initial meeting with our state to the next day when we were advocating. So that was such a wonderful moment. Um and that's something that I won't forget, and I'll continue every year coming back to it, just knowing that I'm still going to be nervous as hell when I first meet up with everyone in the state and feel overwhelmed, but know that everything is going to be okay, because I am grateful for the leadership that we have, and the voice that we have.
Yeah. For me, I feel like it was a little bit different. I feel like the weeks before the event, I was really nervous. I was like, oh my goodness, like this is crazy. But after doing all like the videos and getting prepped, I feel like they do a really great job on preparing you, which I truly, truly appreciate, because I'm a person that I love research and I love information, because that makes me feel prepared. I'm like, okay, at least I have something to fall back on if I freeze in the moment. So that helps me a lot with like my planner and organization. So before I was really nervous, but once I got there on Monday and I met with like my North Carolina group, that's when my nerves went away, which was very interesting. Like before, I was so nervous. I'm like, okay, am I going to like raise my hand? But just having that energy and the vibe of everyone there that was just so amazing. And like you were saying that 16-year-old, we had someone who's a senior in high school and he wasn't sure if he was going to speak. And he's like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna resonate. And I don't say we all like were cheerleaders, but I felt like we kind of were because we're like, well, do you want to speak? Like, how do you feel? And then we just all started talking. And then he finally did it. And I was able to hear him twice on Tuesday speak. And I'm like, try not to tear up. I was like, yes, I was such like a proud friend in that moment. And I'm like, wow, he was so unsure if he was going to do it. But just a few hours before we started practicing it and talked about it, and he killed it. And like you were saying, like nerves, that's like a part of it. But if you have a great group to rally around, it makes all the difference. I know for me, that definitely helped with my nerves. And I was like, yes, I got this.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. Um, yeah, I just think it's something that for us, sorry, I uh yeah, I think it's one of those things where like I think that we are able to really grow as states. And I
Mhm.
like I said too, like in terms of geography, like we had a lot of people that we could lean on compared to other states. Like I know there are certain states, such as like Idaho, for example, that I admit that one, they only had 5 people be able to come. Compared to
Hmm.
us where we had multiple, I believe New Jersey had about 25-ish, 27.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. So it can definitely have people that you can lean on. But I feel like also like the smaller states, they're able to like really move as one solid unit everywhere and really kind of grow like as a family almost. Like this like we're
Yeah.
so and like I know like Kentucky as well, like is such like a really great one. Like they have a group of like 10 that they've been doing it for like years and they are like solid on everything with their pitches and it's so amazing to see that. And I guess that goes on to more connections that we make. The other part of Monday, so this event is run by the Every Life Foundation, and they have a group within it called the Young Adult Rare Representatives. It's something that I remember being a part of, like the inaugural part of it, in 2018 when that first kicked off, and I was a mere 19-year-old, uh, wide-eyed, trying to figure out my role and place in the world in excuse me, in advocacy. So seeing like how it was just like a dozen of us to now like we had a meetup, like a social meetup after the all the educational things and all the planning, and there
Hmm.
was probably a good 50, 60 people in there. It was so incredible to see how many young advocates from 16 to 30 years old all in one room here advocating for rare disease. It really touched me and just seeing just how in just 6 short years and even 2 years where it was Zoom only because of COVID, it it really it really stuck with me just how much um we as a community have grown, and how people are feeling more confident because we have done so much to fight as rare young adults to be able to share with other young people that they have a voice and power and can say uh their story confidently, not only to themselves or to their friends or to their family, but to legislators. So that really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear that you started that experience from 2018, when you were like a young adult to like now and how like the growth has evolved. This was my first time ever being involved in YAR, but it was really amazing to meet all these wonderful advocates as well. And just seeing them before when we first started the day, like we were all, I want to say, a little bit shy and like nervous because, especially the ones for our first time, we're like, oh, I don't really know that many people. So of course you're a little reserved. But towards the end of the day, I believe this was like at 6 or 7 o'clock, and all of us were talking and getting out of our comfort zone. I'm like, wow, this is really amazing to see that in just a few short hours we all became friends. So I really love seeing that, as well as just learning from each other and just knowing what everyone likes with their hobbies and where they want to do like moving forward. And we also talked about rent a lot. We talked about how it is very expensive to be a young adult, especially with a rare disease. And we talked about different geographical locations, because some people lived in DC, some people lived in LA, some people lived in Chicago. I lived in like the Durham area. So we all talked about, hey, what's your rent like, or your grocery bill like? I'm like, huh, I would never thought in a million years this would be a conversation we're having. But I loved it because I love talking about finances and just figuring all that stuff out. So I thought it was very funny. So we were complete strangers, and then by the end of the night, we're talking about financial hardships. I'm like, yeah, this was a turn for sure.
No, it's so funny what you can really bond over. And yeah, for a lot of us, like figuring out like rent, college, work, especially as young adults, like we are all struggling to try and find our place, trying to be able to find that independence, whether that's financially or disability wise or anything. So it's such a yeah, like it's such you wouldn't think that like you'd be able to bond over the hardships, but I feel like that's kind of what makes our community beautiful, in the sense of like that's the first part that does bond us with our disability, but then also the hardships that come along with our disability. Uh and yeah, I think that's something that it really sticks with us. And I was able to see so many people that I've known for years, whether it's people that from 2018 I've known, or people that I've known like throughout the 6 years that I've been. And I've met also a incredible amount of people that I had met before, and seeing them be a part of the community, whether it's their first time or they've done stuff in the past, but their first time at Rare Disease Week, it was such an incredible experience with that. And I love that like we all went out to dinner afterwards. We had an incredible dinner together. And we really had like that really strong celebration before jumping into Tuesday, which that always helped. That is one of my favorite memories, honestly.
Yeah, same. And I also love like how we were such a big group that we had to just try and separate. We're like, oh, we'll do four, no, five parties.
Oh
And
my
then someone's siblings like, oh, I'm here. And we're like, okay, grab a chair. We're all gonna be really close. Like we're gonna figure it out. So I
yes.
remember that like
We're
as
a
a
very
key
inclusive
impression.
community.
Yes, very inclusive. We're like, okay, get in close. Like we're all gonna be besties.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah.
that was a great team building moment, I felt like. All of us trying to figure out how we can find a disability accessible bar slash restaurant, and how we can all fit in on a very busy night.
Yes. And we did. It just
Yeah,
took
we
a
did.
little bit longer and we were more strategic, but hey, it happened.
Yeah, it worked out. And I think, yeah, like Rare Disease Week, obviously we're there for the legislation, but it's such a social event as well. And those connections and those networks that we make are so incredible. And with that despite us all being in different states, we connected and grew together as a community with different disabilities, different states, and now we were ready to go march on Capitol Hill and share our stories. So Tuesday is the first day of our advocacy. Thankfully, traveling into DC was a lot shorter this day. Um, and we were able to go to our meetings. So one thing that stuck with me, so I had two house meetings because I was going to my home district as well as my neighboring district's one. Mine was at 10 and 10:30, and they were in separate buildings. So it was tough because like the first meeting, a couple of us also were having that 10 to 10:30 scenario. So the biggest thing that we balanced was how we can share our story impactfully, but also in a time sensitive manner. So that way we can still have a wonderful conversation and get all the information that we need shared, but also be able to not be late to our next meeting. And I think one of the important things, at least for us, like at as advocates, there are staffers, or a majority of meetings that you have are with the staff of the representative or senator rather than the senator or representative themselves. I have personally never been in a meeting with that, where we have the Senate or representative. I know it's very rare, but I feel like it'd be very cool. It's usually a lot more common in smaller states, or if someone is like very big on rare disease as like one of their big policy points. But with our staffer, we I think for us what worked was we front loaded the information in the sense of like we are so appreciative for your time. We will try and be quick to respect your time and respect our time so that way we're not late to our next meeting and we wanted to be able to share our stories.
Mhm.
And our first meeting went incredibly well. And our second one, um, it was I think the second one was really wonderful because it was last year it was only two of us for that one because I'm in the smallest district in New Jersey. I'm in the northwest part bordering Pennsylvania. But this year we had seven of us, and the staffer that met with us was the same one that met with us last year, and they recognized me, and the fellow person that was with me last year, and we were able to really build off that connection. And one of the big policy points that we ask for every Senate and House member is to join the Rare Disease Caucus. And that caucus is so that select times throughout the year they all meet up together and focus on policy that concerns the rare disease community, and they are our voice in DC all the time because we can only be there once a year. And last year our representative that uh I in the district that I live in joined it. So we were really able to thank him as like being a strong advocate for us to get the representative to join, and just how meaningful it was. And it really stuck with the staffer. Like I feel like I think you could probably attest to this, like the impression that they're like kind of stone faced or that nothing is what we say doesn't matter to them, but like they're people too, and our stories are gonna touch them. So I guess like how were your first meetings, and I guess like how did you make those connections?
Yeah, so I know when I was like training up, I was doing a lot of research on each individual person because we met with the staffers like you. So we have 5 meetings. My first meeting was at 10, my next one was like 11, then another one like 11:30. And I remember in the afternoon we had our Senate meetings and they were close together. I believe it was like 3 to 3:30. So we were running a little bit because it was kind of further away. So I definitely remember that. But the first meeting I had at 10 a.m., I was of course nervous, but I was there before like everyone. And I was like kind of prepping for like my speech, but I was trying to give like myself a prep talk, like I got this, you're gonna kill it, like that motivation speak. Um, so then my team got there, and it was a very small team. It was me, the two leads, and then one other person. Yeah, so it was 4 people for the first 2 meetings. Yeah. Yeah, first 2 meetings. Okay, I was like, "Am I remembering this correctly?" Because later on in the 3rd meeting that we had, there was more people. There was, like, I think 7 of us. For the first 2 meetings, there was only, like, 4 to 5 of us. So that meant, like, I got to tell my story, and this other person got to tell her daughter's story, which, oh my goodness, every time she told it, I almost broke down in tears. I'm like, "I can't." Like, oh Lord. I'm, like, about to break down in tears now just thinking about it. But I was very, very happy like to be there. And when the staffer came in, it looked like someone I kind of went to school with. Like we didn't, but they were around like my age. They said they were from Winston-Salem. And then they said, oh, they were talking about like Apex area, Pittsburgh. So we started kind of like thanking them for their time. So like we really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. And then how my team leads did, they always try to find something to connect with. So when they were talking about like location, they're like, "Oh, we're like in Charlotte. This is blah blah blah." So we started doing that because we came to our meetings very early, and we were able to start usually 5 minutes early, dependent on the staffer and what they had going on, which that helped us a lot with time, so we were not crunched. Um, but we just try to find a key component of what makes all of us connected. And that can be specifically our state, North Carolina, or it could be something else specific. And I know with Representative Hudson's meeting, that was the first meeting I had, and the staffer I spoke to was incredibly knowledgeable. And we talked about like my story as well as that other person's daughter's story, and about how for me personally, I thank them for like the Safe Step Act and supporting that. But I also like asked them to join the Rare Disease Caucus. And then we talked about like my experience with having it in college and not really sure. And then talked about my parents had different insurance due to them being self-employed. So we had to go through different trials and errors to figure out what works best with me having a rare disease. And I'm so thankful now I have an amazing job and I don't have to worry about that because that was very stressful. And towards the end of it, they said that they would pass my story along to Representative Hudson and see if he would possibly be interested in sharing it with others to try and have positive movement forward for rare disease patients, but also specifically for my rare disease. And that was the first meeting I ever had. And I'm like, whoa, they're just like, are they saying that? Like, is this legit? Like, am I in a dream? Like, someone pinched me? And then I'm like, oh, this probably is not going to happen. Like, they're just probably being really nice. And then later on, Dan can testify to this. I got a text. Um, and I was like, oh, it wasn't a dream. This is for real.
It was so funny because yeah, the former person who ran Yar, she had texted me. I had introduced you to her
Yep.
the documentary. But she was like, "Are you like did you travel with her? Like, are you hanging out with her right now?" I was like, "Yeah, like this was dinner after Tuesday night." Um like after all of our advocacy. And she wanted to get your number and she wanted to talk like the heads of Every Life wanted to talk to you because like this was like something that they legit were setting up. Um
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it was just that was incredible to hear. And I was so happy that you were able to be connected to Jamie, who's a part of Every Life, and being able to like set up the whole sharing your story and how it'll get coordinated and work together.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it just that was such an incredible aspect. And I was really happy that you got to do that.
Yeah, me too. I was very happy, but at first I remember I was, of course, shell shocked, like we just talked about, but then also starting to feel a little bit guilty. I'm like, oh my gosh, like why did they choose me? Like, all of you guys are amazing. Like, why isn't everyone getting choose? And that's when I had to like, I think you and I believe Aaron, it was at dinner, you guys talked to me saying it's important to share your story because this will help others in the rare disease. And I took that with me being like, okay, like yes, everyone deserves to like tell their story, but in this scenario, I was picked due to something they liked, and I shouldn't feel guilty about it because other people aren't sharing at this level, but I should feel honored and grateful that this is happening so I can share my voice so I can get other people to share their voice as well, like
Yeah.
this.
And I think that's something too, like your story was so meaningful and touched in such a great way that it's going to encourage other people to get their story, they to share their story, to share their experience. And the more that our stories are out there, the more that it's going to resonate with people to like with our representatives and our house members and everyone like that. um for me, the story that I shared, and it spoke a lot for New Jersey specifically. There's a one of the things that we advocated for was the Accelerating Kids Access to Care Act. And that focused a lot on traveling out of state for care, seeing specialists, getting that approved by insurance, by Medicaid, Medicare. Um, and for me, I all of my specialists for cardiology is in Children's Hospital Philadelphia. And a lot of people, not only in my area of New Jersey, but New Jersey in general, had that issue. And I think a lot of us were able to really share our impact in the sense of we were in privileged situations that we were so close, despite it being different states, we were so close to it.
Mhm.
Um, and that we were able to be financially stable. But there are situations where families are not able to have that financial burden covered or have the security to be able to do this or the coverage or the approval. Um, and I I think for me, like I said, like in the sense of like with my family, like I was thankful that like I was able to have my heart surgeries in Philadelphia and then recover there and then come back to New Jersey. But if I was in a different state and I had to travel multiple states to get to where I am to get to Philadelphia to get my surgeries, it would be a huge financial burden. And not everyone is lucky enough to have the specialist be a state away. Um so I think that was a really great way to tie it. At least that's what I did in terms of my storytelling. And
Mhm.
I had a lot of other people that either they were mothers that are taking their kids out of state or people who've had similar experiences to mine. In both my House and Senate meetings, it was really beautiful seeing how this impacted us all in unique ways and for us to
Mhm.
be able to share it. And I always remember so our leader, as I mentioned, Sarah, she has this adorable daughter named and this she's like 8 years old and it was her first time ever advocating. And I work in education, so I was hyping her up, like trying to like get her to feel confident about her story and that it's important to share it and that she has such a powerful voice and just during the Senate meetings when I had the privilege of being with them, the the confidence that she spoke with, it was so amazing to see. And just like I wish I had that at 8 years old.
Yeah, I I have not seen her, but I can only imagine how powerful and amazing she was with telling like her story. We didn't have anyone that young. The youngest person we had was like a senior in high school, and he did like an amazing job um, stepping up and sharing his story and how it's impacted him, but as well as like family members, because he has the same rare disease as his mom, and so he's seen his mom's hardships, and so just experiencing that and knowing that one day he's going to possibly have something similar, he spoke on that. And I just was so moved. I'm like, wow, like the next generation of like young adults for rare disease, like I'm already so proud. They're going to kill it. Like I know. And I can't
Yeah,
wait for us to meet them and hopefully support them and guide them as much as we can moving forward. The more and more we learn, because you know everything's trial and error.
exactly. And I think that's something that every generation prior to us has fought to be in the spot where we are now, and that we
Mhm.
are going to continue being generations that'll make it easier and more accessible and more able for all disabled people to advocate and fight for legislation and
Yes.
fight for less legislation in the sense of like we're getting things passed and we're getting progress done that is benefiting our community. And I think that I I am excited to see what the next 40, 50 years have for the rare disease community and the sense of progress that we can make.
Oh my goodness. Same. I'm so excited for more research and cures. I don't know why. I'm just super hopeful that there will be a cure or something very close in our generation for our rare diseases or even like our friends' rare diseases. So then we can continue advocating for that cure, but also even after finding that cure, I'm being optimistic here. Once we find that cure, we'll work on other rare diseases to get the cure and research that they need.
I think that'll be wonderful. And I believe I also share that optimism uh as well. I think that we will get cures, we will get funding, we will get support, we will get accessibility. And I think on this optimistic note, we will wrap up this podcast. Montana and I want to thank you all for your support. We know we've been gone for a little bit, but we are so infinitely grateful for all of you. You've helped to make our community so strong and vibrant. You made our experience at Rare Disease Week one that we will never forget. Um, and we are so excited for next episode. We're going to decide on the topic soon, and
Yes.
we hope that you continue supporting us throughout our journey. We would love for you to like, comment on any feedback, give us some support, subscribe to the channel. We have a link to our Instagram as well as our Patreon. And with that, we hope you have a wonderful night.
Have a great night. Thank you all.